It's a global baking club and you guys started it, I swear. It wasn't on my radar. I just wanted to come on and get to know you guys better. And now here we are every week doing the same recipe, and it doesn't matter where you live. And I do it in grams, and that really is quite special because it means that the rest of the world that works in grams can bake with us. We're not just doing the cups and spoons, because otherwise I would alienate everybody else. Well, there we go. It's 6 o'clock. We are the PoP Baking Club, and you are the PoPers. And I am here we are here to bake together. And all of you chose a muffin, bakery style, which is basically a cake texture, not a quick bread, but a creaming method muffin. And I'm going to be putting frozen blueberries in it, but on the recipe you can do, there's my oven. It's lying to me though, it's not really at 175. Here we go. We're gonna start with what's going on tonight, and I flat out used the Professional Baking by Wayne Gisslen. Now, I think a lot of my chef friends think I'm a dork for using textbooks, but I really like them because in this book in particular, you'll notice, oh, my recipe's right here. Here are my scalings, here's my recipe, here are the scoops that I'm gonna be using later. But this is what the book looks like. And if you are looking for this recipe right now, it is on my link tree, and it looks like this. And then I put it into my formulator, and both of these PDFs are on the link tree. So you can get it right now if you go to my profile page. You found it for free online? Perfect. Oh, good. Yep, Nanya's used it in school. I mean, everybody recommends it. And I don't know if you know this, but if you go to culinary or baking school, I don't know if it's by law, but as instructors, we had to assign a book. And so sometimes we'd assign this book because you could use it for multiple classes. I would always try to save people money. I didn't want them spending a ton of money on a book. And a lot of people are using the electronic books, but those expire, so it's up to you. And if you get this and it's out of date, it's really not a completely different book, although sometimes the page numbers change. And I had to work one time where everyone had the outdated book, but I didn't, and so our numbers were always off. However, okay, so when you're doing a book like this, what I like about a textbook is it gives you the recipe right here, and then it tells you to go to the page where it explains the method. And this is, I know it's backwards, I understand, but it says the mixing method is the creaming method. Go to page 214. So you do have to like go back and forth a little bit if you're looking at techniques. But what's great about that is, you know, sometimes you're doing a recipe, let's say you're doing an opera cake, or you start to get into entremets or torts or things like that. If there are multiple recipes going into that, you've got a buttercream and a ladyfinger and, you know, whatever. These all have different methods and different recipes, so you have to move around the book a little bit, but that does not bother me. The other thing is, I love how these are written. The Gisslen always puts lines around the recipes, and this tells you it's actually in the order in which you use the ingredients and also in the groupings, which I love. So when I input recipes into my formulator, which is going to be available, I have a meeting with my web guy tomorrow, hopefully sometime this summer, you put these, I just put these numbers in here, and the batch size is huge. I don't even know what the total is. I forget, but it was huge. So I brought it down to a little more than 3.5 pounds. But this is our recipe in the center. So I'm doing a 50%, okay, so it's double. So it's, let's just say, you know, 3 kilos or 3,000 grams. So here we are at 50%. This is our recipe right down the middle. I just wrote creaming method and then the color of the scoop that I'm gonna use for the big muffin, all right? This is nice because it has variations. And when you substitute, I'm just doing blueberries. So you can use fresh blueberries or frozen blueberries in your muffin. However, if you use chocolate, you want to make chocolate chip muffins, there's actually some changes that you make. You have to change the amount of white granulated sugar, sucrose, and brown sugar before you add the chocolate chips. So they've formulated it to taste better when you include chocolate chips. These recipes aren't fancy. They're not going to surprise you, but they are meant to like build your skills. And every single chapter has an entire technical part. So when you go to muffins or quick breads, It has the technical explanation of the mixing methods. It has all the information you need for baking and for what pan to use. And then, you know, you have the recipe. So when you become advanced, your recipes really are nothing other than grams, baker's percentage, and then the creaming method. And so I am going to talk about the creaming method in broad strokes so that you understand the order, why it is in the order, the ingredients that we're using, why they choose to use cake flour versus all-purpose flour. So the next time you see a recipe that's tying itself in knots with 5 paragraphs of explanations, if you can go through and suss out it's the creaming method, not the reverse, not the modified, and not the muffin or the biscuit method, but the straightforward creaming method, you are going to advance your skills, and all you'll need is to scale out your ingredients like that. Know that they're ready. You can do this on a Monday. Some of it's in your refrigerator, some of it's on your counter or whatever, and then come back a few days later and bake when it's convenient for you. And these muffins, if you were to keep them, okay, so you can't freeze the batter, but you can freeze the baked muffin until you're ready to thaw it and then serve it. And this style of muffin, I think, is what you find in a cake muffin at most bakeries, grocery stores, and whatnot. And I use this method as the entry-level thing that I did when I taught intro-level college baking and pastry arts seeking students. I need to make batches of cakes. Do I keep the dry and the wet separate until I bake? Yes, and that is a wonderful question, Atlas. Thank you very much. A lot of people, you're all in a hurry to consolidate and get to where you need to be. Tell me how to be more efficient. Tell me how to be so that I don't have to do everything all at one time, okay? And I have given you the answer. You scale your ingredients separately because these can literally sit there separate forever. The refrigerated ones need to be in the fridge, and they only last 7 days unless it's butter or something like that. But if you've opened up your eggs or you've, whatever, you know what the standards are for what's in the refrigerator. But the minute you combine them, even if you think that there's not a chemical reaction, think about it. Baking powder has cornstarch in it, so the acid and the baking soda don't interact. That's the perfect blend. The manufacturers have figured it out. The moisture in the air is attracted to all these things. So if you start combining dry ingredients that you think are inert, read the labels and see what's in there. You're going to find that those starches are going to, there's moisture in flour, quite a bit in some flours, more in some than others. So you want to keep them separate, just like I do when I scale my ingredients, okay? This means you're ready to go. I scale things sometimes 5 days in advance. They can just sit on my speed rack. It's very efficient. You can do 5, 6, 10 recipes all at one time. I would scale everything out, but there's no reason to mix it because you're not really saving yourself the time. They're already there. You're just not saving yourself the time. You've just joined. This is the PoP, or the Practice of Pastry Baking Club, and everyone who is out there is part of the club. It's free. You don't have to pay. You just have to be here. And I post recipes that you guys choose on my Linktree once a week. I come here at Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm going to lecture and demo this right now, getting to it. And you guys can ask questions in real time and work on this exact recipe at home. And this is exactly the kind of instruction or demo I would do in person. Today I am doing a bakery style muffin using the creaming method, and I'm going to get my fit check, get ready to work, wash my hands, sanitize my work table or my food contact surface, and then I'm going to mix up this blueberry muffin and get it in the oven, and then I will come back and answer all of your questions that are on any subject. So I have notes. We'll talk about everything. Here's the recipe. You can play along, and I definitely recommend that you take notes, because when you are working on recipes, if you think you're going to remember everything, you're just not. And I know for a fact from experience, so I recommend that. So let me do my fit check. Fit check for me is about being safe and clean in the kitchen. And I have overalls on. It's really cold here. It just keeps my clothes clean and warm. And you want to wear clothes in the kitchen that don't have a lot of dangly things that can get hung up on your equipment, or I mean, you don't want to get hurt. So that's the goal of everything. And then I'm gonna take off my sweater. I've got my oven preheated. You see what temperature it is. I work in a residential kitchen, so it's a propane oven. It is not fancy. I have just a small refrigerator freezer. So any questions you have about working out of your home, I'm happy to answer. I always wear clogs in the kitchen, but the reason I like to wear clogs is they're really good for my feet. And in an emergency situation, if something hot lands on your foot, it's really nice to just be able to kick your shoes off. Okay, so I wear a fresh apron every day. I really like to have an apron on, and I like to put it on tight. It makes me feel like I'm ready to go, and it is nice and clean. They're $5. I have a ton of them. Keeps my clothes clean, and it signals that I work clean. I have short fingernails that stay clean because we don't want hidden hazards. No jewelry, and my hair is back. Your apron is not for doing this. It's not for wiping on. It's actually just to keep your clothes clean and to signal that you're working clean. It's not a glamorous, and it's not meant to be cute. We are not meant to be cute and fashionable. We are meant to be safe and make good food. That doesn't mean we have to look like a bum, but it definitely, you know, it's time to let the ego go. I already cleaned and wiped down my countertop, but just to signify that I use a Lysol wipe to sanitize in case I have anything that could transfer to the food. What I'm making is going to be baked. It's not going to be ready to eat, but once it's baked and I have the muffins, it becomes ready to eat. So I want to make sure that I've sanitized and lowered the risk of anything. And that's because earlier today I was scaling eggs, and eggs have salmonella. On the outside, on the inside, on the shell, everywhere. So let me get my ingredients here. It's gonna be fun. Here's my recipe. So this is what I do. And it has gotten cold again. And one of the things about the creaming method is that temperature really matters, because you want your butter to be a really good room temperature, because when you cream butter and sucrose, which is what I call table sugar, these are crystals. All sugar is a crystal, and it cuts through soft butter, creating air holes. And the air holes that you create in your mixer bowl are the only air holes that are going to exist once it goes in the oven. You don't create more air holes once the batter is complete. The air holes get filled up with CO2 or gas as you get a chemical reaction with the baking powder. And so you create the hole, it goes in the oven, and then it expands, and that's how you get a nice tender crumb. The more air holes you create in your butter, the lighter, more tender muffin you're going to get. And also, when you are creaming it, you want a higher quantity of these air cells that are the same size. So a lot more that are smaller than just some that are irregularly sized. So you're building a stable emulsion, starting with your sugar and butter and moving on to adding eggs and a liquid and finally your flour. And the reason we do this in this order is because we want to begin cohesion in the emulsion and create an emulsion between the butter and the sugar that will hold all of this water, all of the egg, and then, so that we don't overdevelop the gluten and make our lovely tender muffin tough, this goes in last and just gets mixed until it's combined, then you stop. This thoughtful way of putting these ingredients together allows for them to all get along. You don't get curdling, a broken batter. You slowly introduce these things to each other. That's what emulsifying is. It's taking things that don't normally like each other and making them go together. If you see something that's curdled or broken, you can work through it, but going slowly and adding things in thirds and taking your time while adding and using things that are all similar temperature, a little bit warm, a nice warm temperature, they're going to come together more easily. Time, temperature, and moisture. That's all the stuff that this foundational method is teaching you in baking. We're making blueberry muffins, and I love this recipe because it's like a cake muffin and it's sweet. Because I really like oil and, you know, like a quick muffin that's got a liquid fat, you know, like a banana bread like we did last week. So you can make blueberry muffins that exact same way. But the creaming method is so foundational, and I love doing it where you can see the different applications where there are variations of ingredients, variations of inclusions, and things that you do, and it's just really interesting. Lots of recipes use melted butter. Yeah, definitely. So, and we did that last week with the banana bread, and there are many blueberry muffins that use a liquid fat, but we're going to be using the creaming method. I think that this gives you a different texture profile so that you can play with it more if you're gathering together like a breakfast basket or you're bringing something somewhere. It's a little different, and a lot of people don't know how to cream things properly, so it kind of might set you apart a little bit. So I'm going to go through this recipe. If you guys got this off the link tree, we're doing the muffin creaming method, okay? And I cut these numbers in half. This is what it looks like in the book. I cut the number in half, and I'm going to go down the row, and I'm going to take my recipe and compare it to my ingredients, make sure I got my labels right. So for butter or shortening, you can use either, 250 grams. Sucrose, 325 grams. I use sea salt. You can use kosher, but they weigh different amounts. Sea salt at 6 grams. And then we have non-fat milk. Oh, here we go. See, it's confusing. That's why I like labels. This recipe, and I had to double check, it has 25 grams of baking powder, no baking soda. So right away you're like, oh, 25 grams is a lot, no matter for like a 3-pound recipe. But if I had baking soda and baking powder, these would probably be like a 40 or 60% difference, or they'd both be the same, half and half, 50-50. But I'm only using baking powder. And baking powder starts activating the minute it gets wet, but then again in the oven at around 140 degrees Fahrenheit, it reacts again. So instead of doing baking soda and baking powder, this recipe relies solely on baking powder. That's just interesting. We also have NFMS, which are non-fat milk solids. This is milk powder. Let me show you. I got this from King Arthur. It's the Baker's Special Dry Milk. In here is non-fat dry milk. But this one is just non-fat dry milk, and what lives in milk lives in here, but with no moisture. I mean, I forget the moisture amount. I'll have it in my ingredient thing, but we're talking, I don't even know, 3% moisture. So they take all the water out of the milk, and this is what you're left with. But in milk is water, fat, and then proteins and sugars like lactose. There are emulsifiers, which make things creamy. There are sugars which make things sweet. Same reason we like milk or cream or butter. It's all in this powder. They've just removed the moisture and the fat. So now that you know that, when you put this into a recipe, there's no fat. There's very little moisture, but you still have those emulsification properties and the creaminess, flavor, mouthfeel properties. All right, so egg. I have 150 grams of egg, and in my egg lives water and proteins in the egg white, and in the egg yolk are emulsifiers, fat, lecithin. Lecithin's an emulsifier. It's naturally occurring. That's, believe it or not, going to help make all this stuff go together. So when you first add something, your batter might curdle, but then the natural ingredients that live inside the egg yolk and inside here are going to help make it creamy. They all work together. In this recipe, to be smart, because we don't want to overdevelop the gluten, we start with the flour that has less gluten, because the less gluten, then you're less likely to develop it and cause something to be chewy. We don't want a chewy muffin. We want a tender muffin, like a cake that you bite into that's spongy and delicate. So this is cake flour. Some of these muffin recipes will do like part pastry and part cake, but this one's all cake. And this is 500 grams. And then I have the baking powder at 25 grams. And so when I saw 25 grams, what I did is I looked and I said, in my recipe, it says 5%. but there's a good chance I wrote it wrong because I inputted this to here. So I went to the recipe, and over here it has the percentages, not in the thousands like I do, and here it says baking powder, 5%. These are the checks and balances I use so that I don't make a mistake. Because making a mistake in baking is frustrating, and it's really great to just be able to use these processes, which are very physical, which helps me prevent future mistakes. And I'm just checking everything, and it makes my life a lot easier. And then the last thing is, two things. Vanilla is 12.5. If you are scaling, and I do that on my mini digital scale, and I love vanilla bean paste, but I'm just going to use vanilla extract. This is my mini scale, $9.99. It's a jewelry scale from Amazon. So on your bigger scale, the 0.5, you're going to either go up or down every time. That's why you won't see 0.5s on my bigger stuff. If this had been 499.5, I went up to 500. If you naturally go down, then go down. But you have to come up with a system where I know if it's 0.5, I always go up because that's my natural inclination. And then I've built in consistency. That decision is consistent. However, my mini scale will do, 12.75 grams. It gets pretty specific. So this is 13 grams of vanilla. And then I made a label and I have a lid of frozen blueberries, 250 grams. What I recommend with frozen fruits is that you scale it into a deli cup and get it into the freezer immediately. If you leave it on the counter even for 5 minutes, it's going to gather condensation, and then when you freeze it, it's going to clump, and then that moisture is going to be on the outside of the blueberry, and when you put it into the batter, it will streak more. And I'm going to show you how I've been taught in a bakery setting to add frozen fruit so it won't streak as much into a dough or a batter. But because I took frozen blueberries and got them back in the freezer immediately, they did not get condensation. So that should definitely help, and I recommend it to you. I love vanilla bean paste the most. I just love the specks in it, and I really enjoy it. It's less moisture and more viscous. So if I'm doing something that's hypersensitive to moisture, like a meringue or a pavlova or something, and I don't mind that it's going to get little vanilla bean flecks in it or tinged vanilla color, I'll use a vanilla bean paste. But I've been using a lot of it, and then I never use the vanilla extract, and then it sits there, the bottle's full, and it's expensive, getting old. So I've been trying to use it more often, so you still get the great flavor, a little more moisture, and you don't get the flecks. So it's a matter of those things to consider when you're picking which one to use. All right, so we have our recipe, and then the weirdest, water, okay? This is actually 375 grams of water, and this is gonna go in right before the dries. And this is a weird addition. So a lot of the recipes are gonna have something more beautiful than water, but because this recipe is formulated to taste like a commercial bakery muffin, the water is appropriate, and it does have, oddly, a commercial bakery flavor, which I actually like. All right, so I'm gonna gather my tools. I am using a mixer, and a lot of people say, can I do this without a mixer? Yes, you can. If you're using a hand mixer, you're gonna want a bigger bowl, not narrow, because you're going to want to have room to work. But I'm a big fan of the mixer, and I would beg whoever you know to get you a mixer. It is a life-changing piece of equipment, and I would pick this over a food processor and all kinds of other stuff. It's vital. So this is my Tammy. Sorry, I meant to bring it. I wanted to get a bigger one because it's a lot more flour. All right, so here's what I do when I have my scalings to keep me straight. I put things together that are going to work together. So the first thing that we're going to do is the butter and sugar. So I'll put it over here and add my paddle to my machine. This is going to go later. The eggs, and the eggs are going to go before the water. And I can add the vanilla to the eggs. And then these are my dries, and I am going to sift these together and then put them aside, and then those are going to go in last. So let me move a couple things. You saw that I had a tray with a parchment on it, so I just grabbed the parchment. I use my Tammy, And I'm going to take these ingredient labels off and put them right here. This way, if for some weird reason I notice I'm making a mistake, I'll be glad I have those tags there, because then I can go back to it and I know that I'm using it or that I've forgotten it. It's a great way to retrace your steps, and I highly recommend it. So I'm going to put the flour in first, and this is cake flour. This is the baking powder, and there's a lot of it. This is the salt, and it's sea salt. You can use kosher, but you have to weigh it. And then this is the non-fat milk solids, NFMS or powdered milk. And then I'm going to just sift this onto my little parchment here. And what I missed, because it's a little lumpy, I'm going to use my spatula to get out. One of the reasons that you want to sift, and it's very important to combine your dries, is because we've already talked about the fact that we don't want to overwork the gluten. So if you don't do little baby steps along the way, first of all, it's not going to be dispersed as well. And you want your leavener to be dispersed so you don't get, because we're going to put this in last, and it's just going to be mixed until combined. So if you have all your baking powder in one spot and it's not dispersed, you're going to get uneven bubbles in the oven. All right, so you're going to start with the fat first. We want to get the fat into the bowl and get it on the paddle. And we're not going to bang it. We're not going to go on a high speed. This is my butter. I always cube and chop everything so that it can warm up. It gives it surface space, and so that I don't have a lump. You don't put chunks and lumps of anything. If you were to just put your butter sticks in here, of course you can. You can do whatever you want. But if you just put your butter sticks in there, if you don't have sticks, you have a block like I do, you're making everything work harder, and you're banging it. And I don't think you need to bang things. Everything needs to be very gentle. A lot of work actually goes into making butter. If you think about how I'm going to be doing some butter experiments. So someone went to a lot of trouble to make this butter, and I think if you mistreat it, you aren't respecting food. And food is expensive, and butter is exorbitant right now. It's a beautiful product, and it's really a luxury, to be honest. So I treat everything with respect and give everything consideration. So here's an example of not going too fast on your eggs. I would like to put the vanilla in with the eggs, but there's no reason to do it yet, because I'm not saying it could burn the eggs, but why would I risk anything happening because I'm in a rush or I don't have patience? So I'm just going to open these things, and I'm going to put them over here. And I'm getting the butter started, but if you notice, when I lift it up, look at it, it's all on the paddle. And this is all very firm, and this is a good lesson. It's moving around, so it's getting soft, but this is firm. Okay, so scraping during the creaming method is part of the method, and it's cold. Maybe I'll end up using my torch. I thought I was done with my torch. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to push this off, because this is quite firm. Butter shouldn't be this firm, and this is too firm, so I am going to use my torch. It's a fat, so it's not like we're trying to melt it. I'm not going to melt the butter, but I want it to be like a pomade. I want it to be warm enough and soft enough to receive the sugar and hold it, because it's the fat, when it's hard, is not going to stretch and hold air like a balloon. It's going to stay firm, and we want it to be flexible so that it can receive and develop as many air cells as possible. We are making a blueberry muffin using the creaming method, so kind of like a cookie where you cream the fat with the sugar, and almost like a cake instead of like a quick bread. So I'm going to get my torch and I'm going to warm this guy up. Time, temperature, and moisture, I'm going to use a little bit of speed on here, but I don't want to bang it. When you bang butter, you bang the water out of it. It's butter abuse. And turn the gas on. And warm up the bowl. I'm not trying to melt the butter, I'm just warming the bowl because it's really cold where I live. I know it's hard for you guys where it's warm to imagine, but it's cold here. All right, so we already have a major change, and I love looking at these changes. Look at this. You can even see where it's still a little bit cold right around the center of the paddle. It's almost a different color. It's darker. It's not as light. When you lighten butter, you're literally adding oxygen to it, so it oxygenates and it gets light. Look at how pretty. So now when I throw some of the butter off, it actually comes off because it's just more pliable. Now that it's a little softer, and what's funny is like you can get your bowl warm. It's warm right now. But then if I paddle it, it redistributes the cold butter and then it makes the bowl cold. All right, so now I'm going to add 1/3 of the sugar, and you can hear it grinding. Those are the sugar crystals. Have you ever seen rock candy or one of those crystal gardens like when you were a kid? Crystals, they grow and they attach to one another and they spread. So these crystals are really fascinating. They make things, you know, some sugars are shiny because of the crystals, but these are literally cutting holes in the butter. And I added in thirds, little at a time, so all the ingredients can get used to each other. Right now, the fat, which is 100% butter, you could use shortening or margarine or vegan butter, is gathering up the sugar that I put. It's grainy, you can see. Can you see? I have terrible lighting. Okay, when we emulsify this batter, it's going to go from grainy and broken and lumpy to smooth. That's our goal, and it starts now. And in baking, every single step, if you treat it in your practice, which is the way that you work in the kitchen is the way you work in life. How you work right here and right now says a lot about you. So we are on one thing. This is the one thing we are concerned about. I'm not worried about the next step. I have everything in front of me. I have all the time in the world because I'm not developing gluten yet. The gluten's over here. That's my only problem. And I'm not overbeating this, and I can turn it off, but it's going and it's great. So this is practicing one good step after another, and so your baked product's going to be better than it would have been. And if you take 10 people and you're applying best practices, everyone's going to say, how did you get yours to turn out so great? I mean, I've given people recipes where they've said, oh, I make that all the time. I'm like, oh, well, do you want a bite of mine? And they eat it. They're like, yeah, mine doesn't taste like that. Because I know how to manipulate the ingredients to bring the best out of them. All right, let me show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to turn the paddle up a little bit more, and I'm going to scrape it. Okay? So it's grainy. That's all the sugar, and it's not big. You see that? It's not big, but I can get it off. It's coming off. So we've got a nice soft butter. I'm just going to take the paddle and scrape around like this. But scraping is really important, and what gets stuck on your paddle can be cold, it can be unmixed. So I think it's really important to take a spatula very quickly and just wipe it off. And I want to tell you guys, if you do watch my videos, I cut out a lot. So it might not look like I let something rest or cool or whatever, or I didn't scrape, but I just do that for time. I spend a lot of time scraping. Just so you know, it is part of baking and it helps incorporate. So if you scrape, then you bang your food less. It kind of works together. I'm going to turn it up to medium and let it get fluffy. Remember this though, when you have cookies that spread too much because you creamed the butter too long, when you create more air cells or too many, all those, they fill up with air and spread because you have more. If you have less, it stays tighter. So we don't want to build too many air cells in our cake. We want just the right amount. So we're just going to gently bring it a little bit bigger. I will scrape, and then my next step is to add the eggs and the vanilla, and then the water. And this is a big quantity of water. What's the percentage? This water comes in at 75%. So it's 375 grams of water to 500 grams of flour. How do you get all of this in here without breaking it? You do it by using the time and temperature and going in stages and letting them get to know each other slowly. It's their agenda and they get what they need. We don't have an agenda. We do what they want us to do. It's like when you're making bread, you can't make the yeast do what you want them to do. You can move them around, you can put them in the fridge to slow them down, or you can put them in a warmer space to speed them up, but that's really all you can do. So you can see it's like thicker on the walls of the bowl, and this is much more pliable, but it is cold in here, so you can feel that the cold is working on the butter. So I don't think that I am going to have to use my torch again, but you can definitely see the grains of sugar in there. And this is light, but I'm going to go a little bit longer, a little bit lighter. I was reading a lot about the creaming method today and going over my notes and writing notes. And this recipe, we want to have nice aeration. We don't want it over aerated. We just do a little bit more. We are making a blueberry muffin in a cake style using the creaming method. And I speed it up real quick just to get the stuff out of the middle. And I have to say that everything I do is based on how would it be done in the bake shop? Because I know we're home bakers and I know we're making a home batch. But the truth of the matter is anything that you do that is emulated after a production kitchen is easier, flat out. There is no baker or pastry chef out there that is going to incorporate extra steps or make their life harder. They're just not. They don't have the time, and they're efficient. So if I give you any tips or tricks, it's for you. It's not just for professionals. They're actually for ease. So look at how much thicker it's gotten along the edges. You see that? And lighter in color and a little bit softer. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is ready for the next stage. I'll let it go like another 30 seconds, and then I'm going to slowly add the egg. So we have stretched out the fat. The paddle causes friction. It does warm it up a little bit. If you live in a really warm environment, which many of you do, you're going to have the opposite problem that I'm having right now. And I'm going to add the egg in 3 stages, and between each addition, I'm going to scrape. Real quick, I'm just going to scrape. That makes it so that I'm not overwhelming. A lot of times in videos, you see people throw all the ingredients all at once. It just is not the way to work. The ingredients don't like it. They reject one another, and then you end up with lumps and the broken. So this has gotten really fluffy. I think it looks good. I'm gonna scrape real quick, and then I'm gonna add 1/3 of the eggs. Yeah, this is just coming off the paddle. It's very light in color. I am liking it. My eggs are room temperature. I scaled them this afternoon. They've been sitting out. And I'm going to show you guys what this looks like. I'm going to pour, I'm going to scrape, and then I'm going to pour some more eggs in. Now you may want to speed it up, and I could do that just for 1 second, but I'm going to stop it because you will see. This might be a little hard for you guys because I'm not holding it the best. But I'm going to scrape off what's on here, and then I'm going to scrape around the edge, and then of course at the bottom of the bowl, it's very important. Now you see that? There's egg. Can you see that egg from the bottom? So when you talk about having the beater that's got the spatula on it, I would argue, well, it's not helping because you still need to scrape the bowl on your own. And one of the biggest reasons, other than this is a good way to incorporate your ingredients and keep things moving in a very cohesive direction, is also that you've got your eyes on the situation. You are watching and touching and looking and keeping track. All right, so I'm going to start it on low, and then I'm going to add another 1/3 of the egg. And you are going to watch it. I call sploosh. Now it just splooshed. You see that? It's not emulsified. That is the opposite of being emulsified. You see? Right. So what I'm going to do is I hit it and then right back down. I give it a sec, and then I'm going to scrape it. I'm not going to go on and on and on. You can't really overwork it. There's just no logical reason to keep mixing it when you can just stop it and get it toward where it needs to be. Okay, so watch. I can feel the egg is underneath. Look, it's all in there. So scraping just ensures that you have an eye on the situation, that I am gently incorporating these, and then I'm going to use the mixer, and then I'll add the last one, and then I'll scrape again. So there we go. It's coming together. I can turn it up just a sec like that, kind of get it going. And then I am going to add the final amount. And it's going to do the exact same thing. I use all of the ingredients because I scaled these out. I want to make sure to get all of this in here. Not a big deal, just takes a second. But this is definitely broken. Obviously I just added egg to it, but and I'm going to go ahead and add the vanilla. So let me show you what it looks like, and then I'll start mixing it. I'll go ahead and scrape. I've been reading a little bit about this underbaking tendency of Americans, and what I'm learning is it comes down to nostalgia and that people love cookie dough, so we've kind of swung the pendulum a little too far in the other direction and made everything raw. And, you know, when you're talking brown butter, you're really just creating a situation where you're toasting the proteins and the sugars, which is the Maillard reaction, which, in my opinion, it's great, but then everyone's underbaking their cookies and leaving them raw, which is illogical. Because why aren't you cooking your cookies until they're also undergoing the Maillard reaction? So this looks really good. I'm getting excited because what I'm seeing is a smooth, soft, emulsified. Why can't I do this? It is smooth. Okay? It's going to get smoother. And we're going to add water to it, and it's going to get rough. So we're going to go kind of back and forth. So I'm going to cream this just a little bit longer. Can you help explain the difference between a muffin and a cupcake, like the size and density? A muffin is wetter and more dense. A cupcake is like a cake. It's sweeter and lighter and much sweeter. And almost more like if you think of a box cake mix, you know, buttery, velvety, whatever. This one's going to have a little more of an open crumb structure than a cake. It's in between a banana bread and a cake, where you've got a really tender American butter cake. All right, so we've got this going. Now what I'm going to do is start to add the water, and I'm going to add it in thirds and very carefully because I don't want it to get away from me. If I add a third and I go too fast and I keep adding it, I could, but like I might not get it back. It might stay broken, and we don't want that, okay? And I'm also not going to add the water when I'm going really fast. So I need to slow the mixer down. I need to do a third of the water, drizzling it in. Okay, so I'm going to add a third. Look at that. Can you see how it's sloshing? So I'm going to go ahead and stop it. It's very broken, okay? And it's all on the sides of the bowl. So what I'm going to do is help it along. I'm going to just help it along, and I've only added, maybe I accidentally added more than a third, maybe just a little bit more. And then I am not going to add more water until this has come together. So we'll put it on low, we'll use time and patience, and we will watch it come together. And if I were here by myself, this whole thing would have gone way faster. This recipe is not meant to taste like a homemade recipe. Honestly, I got a recipe one time out of this book from Rosie's Bakery in Boston, and it tasted just like the Pepperidge Farms frozen cake. This is meant to taste like a grocery store muffin, like a cake muffin from a grocery store bakery. And so it tastes commercial, but in the best way. This is not an oil or liquid fat muffin. This is a creaming method where you then add the liquid, the egg, and then the liquid. So you cream the butter and sugar together, you add the egg, and then you add the liquids. And then finally, at the end, you add your dries and you combine until just combined. And I'm going to be adding the frozen blueberries when I scoop. So I'm not adding them to the recipe. But if I wanted to add chocolate chips, I would add the chocolate chips after the flour had been mixing for its total time, about 75%. So before the end, I wouldn't mix it all together and then add the chips. I would do it before it was over. And it could be cold. I may need to torch the bowl. But I'm not going to add the flour until I get this how I like it. And it is cold. Let me torch it one more time. What would be my problem if my muffins never rise enough? It could be the formula. You have a bad formula. You're using old baking powder or soda, or you mixed it and then once you add it, because I haven't added baking powder or the leaveners yet. Once you add those, if you leave the batter in your bowl too long, a lot of that gas is dissipated and then it goes in the oven. It doesn't have any more gas. That's called low bench tolerance. So you need to get it in the oven quickly. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the flour to give it what I call catch, and I'm doing it on low. And that's how much I use, one little scoop, not too much, and it's helping. Maybe a tiny bit more. So let me add a little more flour. But now that I'm adding the flour, I'm going to go really slow until we get to a nice emulsification like stage. And then I'm going to get all the flour in and stop. So I'm aware that the clock is now ticking and that these things have been activated and I need to keep it moving. All right, so let me scrape, scrape, scrape. So you want to stop once it's all the way incorporated, but I'm not going to keep adding flour until I see that it's starting to incorporate. I'm going to go on the bottom and get all the moisture in there. This is my jumbo pan. So I'm going to add a little more flour. I get a little more of the flour in there. Alrighty. Put this here. So I'm going to take what's left here. I'm going to add it. Stir it. It's very light. It's just not emulsified as much as I would like it to be. So I'm going to keep going for just a sec, but then I'm just going to call it. And we'll see how they turn out. What will happen with this is the grain of the muffin will be just a little uneven. But I think this is a temperature thing. So if you have a really cold kitchen, it can really affect emulsification. Can you see? Let me just stir this up a little bit. All right, let me tend to the batter and then I'll... Very light and fluffy. It's supposed to be light and fluffy. It's very airy, but it's just a little. It smooths out when you run the spatula over it, but either way. All right. I have my oven. The recipe says 400. I have my oven set to 375, so we'll see. All right. I'm going to leave it. Okay. Now the biggest difference that people, I don't know that they viscerally understand, is that when you use a mix to make anything, a brownie, a muffin, if you use a mix and it turns out beautifully and you're like, why can't I replicate that? But when you use a mix, it's full of emulsifiers. So it makes you look like you really know what you're doing, when really those chemicals are doing most of the work for you. When you look at a place like Crumble, the reason they hire teenagers is because they don't have to train them. When you rely on technique, you have to pay people who know what they're doing, and when you rely on mixes and things like that, you don't have to as much. Okay? You can see it will pour out of here, but not really. You would need to use a spatula to get it out, but we are going to scoop. And I have raw sugar and disco sugar, very shiny, large grain sugar. And when you add a topping to the top of a muffin, you need to remember that whatever you do is going to weigh that top down. So if you add streusel or toppings, nuts, anything, first of all, you have to do an even amount. You don't want to clump it, and you don't want to weigh down the center. You want that crown to be able to pop up. So I used to say, like, if you put sugar on it and then tapped it out, what would fall off? You don't want layers and layers. You want a single even layer. So I think I want to use the big one because I want a big crown. So I'm going to do one and see. If I'd taken these out 10 minutes ago, they would all be wet and stuck together. So these are well-frozen blueberries that I already scaled out earlier. So I am going to take this and just sprinkle them on top and then scoop. And I do not like people who suggest adding the flour to the blueberries. Said, why would you add flour to something you just spent so much time working on? It doesn't make sense to me, and it's not, I don't think it's practical. And anytime you add any variable flour, you risk everything getting, tough. So then I'm going to scrape the top, run this up against the side of the bowl. I'm going to try to get all of these to be even. And it's important that I aim for the center of the muffin pan to keep everything clean. The cleaner I can work, the better. And as I run this up the side of the bowl, it gets the blueberries a little dispersed. So once I get enough scooped up, I'm going to add more blueberries. Sprinkle a little bit more. And this way the streaking is reduced. Because if you stir them in, there's really no way to keep them from streaking. So like I said, this used to be a practical exam I would give at the end of the first 8 weeks of the first semester of a baking program. And, I would look at neatness and efficiency and all these different things. But I would tell people when you're scooping and you want it to stay clean on your pan, you want to be above it. You want to drop it and then lift. Don't go back and forth or push it in. That's counter-indicated. Then you introduce a bit of a mess. I'll put this here. All right, so I just want to show you what the batter's looking like. It's still it's getting light and aerated. So I'm going to sprinkle this on, and then I'm going to scoop the top. And I'll show you again what I mean by what I just said. So I'm going to pull in the blueberries, and then drop and lift. If you go back and forth, fuss over it or overthink it, so you want to drop and lift, you'll end up leaving a mess on the top of your pan, and you don't want to do that. Now, I did not dial in this amount, so I don't have exactly the amount that I need. I can take what's left over and put it in an aluminum foil pan and bake that, and that would work great. But you either have to spray your pan or use pan liners, or else your batter will stick. Okay, so I'm going to take raw sugar and sprinkle it on this side. And again, you want to kind of work clean, because if you get a lot of sugar on your pan, it ends up baking on there and getting your pans really dirty. So I want to just be really even. I want to go all the way around. And you want to fill your liner up about 75%. Otherwise, you will not get a nice crown. Now, back when I was doing this in production, I had, exact everything dialed in so that we knew exactly how many we get, like 94 muffins out of a 20-quart mixer batch. And we had a system. I knew which scoop to use and all that. So when I play, sometimes I can't dial it in, but you absolutely can take that recipe and scale it up and down. And when you choose a scoop, or when you do this, you don't want it so overfilled that you end up with that burnt crown, but you don't want it so low that you don't get a muffin top. You want a muffin top. And again, if you put too heavy of toppings on here, it will hold it down, especially if you're doing them all in one spot, believe it or not, especially if you're doing streusel or something heavy. All right, so these are going to go in a hot oven because I'm using baking powder. It's a pretty good percentage of baking powder, and I want it to really get an oomph. And the other thing is I can already see, and oftentimes I'll brush the sugar off of here because I don't want it sitting on the pan. But I can see the sugar already, because it's hygroscopic, dissolving. It's already doing its thing because it's taking the moisture from the muffin. So what ends up happening is that it starts to dissolve. So this is what they look like. I'm going to pop them in the oven, and I have my oven set at 375. All right, so I'm going to work quickly so we can maintain the temperature. And I would say my oven's a little low. I can tell. So I'm just going to turn it up because that's what my oven is saying. So we will come back. I'll check this in 10 minutes. And that took me much longer than it should have. This whole process should have gone a lot faster. You can use fresh blueberries, not need to use frozen blueberries, and fresh blueberries are not going to bleed. So here's my analysis. My scooping was a little uneven. You can see some are taller than others, but they are starting to rise above the rim. So we're getting a bit of oven spring, which is good. And I'm not going to risk anything by opening the oven. I see at the bottom, Eli. Okay, let's see, Eli. Chocolate blackout cake would be good.
Oh, there we are.
Yay!
Finally, I
Hi!
guess it did change the settings. It's letting me do this, so that's great.
You know what? They just did an update and it's benefiting me as well. So hi! It's good to see your face.
I know it's nice to actually chat with you and be able to see you.
Yeah, we can let other people on. I just wanted to try. Eli has been here, as many of you have, but Eli and I connected, like 2.5, like a long time ago, and I couldn't even get 100 viewers, and here we are. It's really good to see you.
I know, and I'm at work right now, so
Okay,
I have
we'll
my scrubs
whisper.
on, but no, we can be loud. I came to the
What do
auditorium,
you
so I'd be
do?
allowed.
I meant to ask you, what do you do that you wear
Uh,
scrubs?
Respiratory therapy.
Oh, very cool. Let me check these. Okay, they're looking good. All right, so I want you to ask a question or whatever it is you want to chat about real quick. Let's do that.
This has all happened in layers, so I've become comfortable weighing my ingredients and
Okay.
then scaling for different amounts if I want to do like a bigger or smaller. But
Okay.
I'm trying to get better at knowing when a cake is done. So I'm so used to relying on 30 minutes and whatever it says, but I don't want to rely on that. I just took a 9-inch spring form and turned it into an 11 by 16.
Okay.
So I just kind of sat next to the oven and poked at the center of it and kind of guessed, but I thought you might have some good advice.
So there are different signs of doneness for different cakes. Some signs of doneness are the glistening. Is the glistening dissipating? Is it drying out a tiny bit? Because if it's glistening, it's most likely too moist. And what happens when you pull a cake out of the oven, as you know, when it's moist, is it looks like it has structure, but then you let it out. And because you didn't dissipate all the moisture enough, it's going to fall back on itself because those cell structures are starch. And if they're wet and they're hot in the oven, they're like that. And as they dry out, if they were dry enough in the oven, they're going to hold their shape. But if they have any moisture, that's going to re-enter the starch and then it's going to fall. So you're going to look for glistening. Does it look dry? You know? And a lot of stuff's like from the side eye, right? Is it beginning to pull away from the sides of the pan? And then because I've done thousands of cakes, especially when you do wedding cakes, you just do a lot, right? You could do 56-inch cakes just like in a day, like just cause you woke up. So you can look in there and tell when they're done. But if you're going to open the oven, wait until you can't stand it anymore. And then when you press into it, it should not stay. If it doesn't bounce back at all, you've gone too far. So you can learn to dial things in. But when you press it, it will sort of gently come back and also be pulling away and also not be glistening anymore because these are starting to look good. Okay, so they're getting a little bit taller. I'm going to go ahead and open real quick. And they are a little glistening. They're light in color. And so with these, same with the cake, if I pulled them out, they're going to sink. So I'm going to look for, there's expansion, which we've got. Then we have color. Then we start to get the evaporation, and that's where the nuance comes in. So you're kind of using all your spidey senses and all the signs of doneness. A timer is a hard thing to let go of. It means nothing. A timer is a reminder. And just a second ago when you were talking, it was the first whiff that I got. That's the first sign of doneness. It's not done. It's the first sign that we're getting there. So I smelled it. That's a reminder. Something's in the oven. But the timer is a reminder something's in the oven. It does not and will not ever. And there's not a recipe out there that can give you the time. So that's a misnomer. And so, you know, people, I literally baked those cookies yesterday for 13 minutes and they were raw.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say I baked them for 19, I mean, in a commercial setting, we used to bake them for 22 to 24 minutes. So in general, I think that we have a low tolerance, especially as Americans. We get nervous. We think color means burnt. Color means flavor and it means dry. And caramelization and color is where the flavor is. So I would say, like, I would never open up the oven on that and touch it. It's irrelevant. It's maybe a gauge, but wait until you can't stand it and then touch it. And if it's popping right back, you're good. If it's sinking and staying, there's enough moisture that when you pull your cake out, it's going to go like that. Does that help?
That does help. That's what I was worried about. You know, it's too thin for me to stick a thermometer in. But it does help because when I poked it, it went down and then puffed back up.
Right.
Not quite all the way up. So I gave it another like minute or two and pulled it out. And in the next layer, I tried it with 2 minutes less. So
Okay.
trying to dial it in. That does
So you're
help a lot.
dialing it
So I
in.
was on the right track.
And I think you're good at sticking with the recipe. The problem with jumping around from recipe to recipe is that you, if it fails and you don't like a recipe, I say move on. But if it works, but you have questions, then you need to, it's not that you're fixing or recipe testing or recipe developing. You're not doing that. You are working your oven, your kitchen, your mixing methods. It's not the recipe that's going to have the variability. It's going to be how you handle it. So I love taking notes and just keeping track. And eventually that will become your signature thing. And you'll just, and then with time, with practice, I mean, I really could look into an oven full of 300 cakes and just say, I mean, I could go and pull because you really do develop. Your eyes are incredible for knowing what's going on with your food.
Mhm.
Incredible.
I know what you're talking about with that glistening top. I mean, there was a point where it's like, all right, we need to start taking a look.
Exactly. And so you want to limit the number of times you open your oven, but so save it until you can't stand it anymore. And take note. I have to write down the time because I'm not going to remember how long. I mean, I think I did 20 and then 10 and then 5. I write it down. I keep notes. I'm obsessive. So that's how I do it.
I'm similar.
All right, do you have time for another one?
I do,
Sandy
and
says, I'm
actually,
always afraid to overcook. We're all afraid to overcook,
mhm.
but I will suggest and encourage, I'd rather slightly over than under. I promise you, you'll be happier. And you're not going to burn it. You're watching it. That's why I told you I got yelled at by a chef one time because I was really nervous. I was doing a stage. And she was like, don't stand in front of the oven. I was like, oh my gosh. And it was chocolate, so it was hard to know if it was done. And I was just freaking out. So like, I know how you feel, you know?
Because it's already dark. It's chocolate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're like, I
that's
don't
going to
know. I've
be a
never
hard
baked this
one.
before. And I just did this under pressure and you're all watching me. So it's like, and you have to suck it up. You can't say anything. So yeah, I get it.
I guess next week we'll check that out when we have the
Oh
chocolate
my gosh,
cake.
we will. We have lots of senses. And if you are left without your thermometer, what are you going to do? So it's really good to develop the skills without the tools. Very important, actually. Let's take a look at these. So these are getting a lot darker. Right, so right now, do you see how it kind of comes back?
Oh yeah, it just bounces right back up.
I'm going to give them another minute. In fact, I'm going to flip them around. I would serve these to people and they're going to taste good, but are they bakery style perfect? No.
Have you seen that people talk about leaving blank spaces between muffins to get a bigger muffin top?
Yes, I've seen that. And that's all about airflow. And
Mm.
the thing is, I would say that those muffin pans are designed to do what they do. And when you start trying to outthink things, you're creating variability. And you're not going to hurt your muffins. People can do whatever they want. But it isn't a trick, or the manufacturers wouldn't be selling them that way and bakeries wouldn't be baking them that way. There are these ideas where people are trying to outthink everything. But if that were an issue, or if that were the solution, you would see it in bakeries. So it's not always a yes or no, but it's a think about it. And if you have a crummy oven with no airflow and it goes, then maybe, I don't know, maybe you want to try that. But I see people with the ice cubes and everyone's rushing everything and doing these things. And really, if you just have a little bit of just patience, do what you're working on, take notes, and then next time change one thing. And no one changes one thing. Change one thing, because if you change two, it's like having two dogs and you find pee-pee in the morning on the floor. Do you know what dog did it? Really? You think you do, right? Because you always think it's the bad one, right? But you don't know. So when you have one dog, you know who did it. And it's kind of that thing. When you change two things, you don't know. So going slow, having patience, and enjoying the process, I think, is where the learning comes from. And just don't look for easy answers or tricks or hacks or be reading what everyone's saying you should do. You know what you should do. Build in your intuition. You're the only one who's in your kitchen, in your climate, with your equipment, with your brain, your experience.
Everyone's reminding you to check the muffins, and I just realized maybe it has been a minute. I don't know. I didn't see the timer.
I didn't set the timer. You guys are the best. Let's pull them out. Okay, flip. All right, I am going to pull them out. That's hilarious. Do you see? Oh, yeah, they're dark. But if I didn't take care and take notes and stuff, my life would be a disaster. So some of these will be good. Some of them will be wonky. And this would be a C. If I were grading someone and they handed me this, it'd be a C. But that's okay. If I were in the muffin business, I would dial these in. So I should have used a bigger scoop, because you can see how some of them are taller, but none of them have a muffin top like I like. So we're going to let them cool.
Is that what made them a C? They're just not.
Well,
they're not
I'll tell you.
puffy enough.
Let me tell you why they're a C. I'll hold them up. Let me get another mitt. Let me get a hot mitt. So when I would grade people, and we did these, people would always want to do exciting stuff. And I would say, dial it in. I'd start off a couple of days before practicals and I say, does anyone want to do muffins? No, I don't want to do muffins. And then they get nervous and they'd all be doing muffins. So they would work on them for 8 weeks, and you could work on them whenever you felt like you needed extra practice. So in a bakery, the whole goal is to get everything the same color, same size. When you come in this week and come in next week, the texture, the color, the size, everything should be the same. The only goal of baking is consistency, other than flavor and, blah, blah, blah. Because if you think about cheap bakery at the grocery store and artisan bakery, what do they have in common? Consistency, size, color, flavor. There's nothing wrong with these. This is a home looking batch. But if I had a student for 8 weeks and they look like this, I would feel bad about my teaching skills, because I can usually get people to get where they need to be. But again, we were using the same scoops. We had detailed instructions, lots of practice. The crown's not great. Now, the next thing I check after they've cooled for about 5 minutes, you want to take your muffins out of the pan. If you leave them in here, the heat will then, instead of the moisture dissipating, it will get reabsorbed by your muffins and they'll get soggy. So after a few minutes, and that's something I would grade them on, awareness. Are they off doing dishes and they forgot to take their muffins out, or did they set a timer? Things like that. So then you take your muffins out and you let them cool. And then after everyone would leave, I would take a serrated knife and I would cut them in half. And just like last week with the banana bread, the muffin will tell the story. How dark is the bottom? Do I have bubbles all the way through, or is it tight here? Is it too dark? Is it slanted? Is it domed? You can see the crumb. Is it an open crumb?
I'm sure that I'm going to talk to the room since she's gone, but I'm sure you guys love her as much as I do. We have a treasure in this one, you guys.
Thank you. I'm going to pull this out. So when you slice it in half, you don't want to do it when it's hot. The way you eat a muffin when it's still warm is to break it. So I'll pull these out and put them on this rack. and let them cool. And then I can slice one before we go.
And Kathleen, I think I've got to run, but
All right. Well, thanks.
thank you for
That's great.
having me
Now I can have
on.
other people on here without being nervous.
Yeah, it was hopefully it was easy, and I'd love to be back sometime, but I'll let some other people get a turn.
Thank you so much. You are wonderful, and I am so lucky to get to know you. It's incredible. Thank you.
Well,
What a fun
likewise.
thing.
I'll send you pictures of my next cake project.
I would love that. Have a good night at work.
Thank you. We're
All
almost done.
righty.
It's almost 7 here. Good night, guys.
Okay,
Thank you,
good.
Kathleen. Night,
Thanks for
David.
coming. Bye. Do I let you go or do you? Oh, there he goes. Gosh, everybody, is that insane? I think we have a new thing where you guys can all come on and ask questions. That would be super fun. I'm gonna let these cool. They're on this rack. It's kind of like a cooling rack, and I took them out of the pan, and then I'll be able to slice one. All right, let me cut one of these in half. I'm gonna show you, and then I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna pick a nice, they're still pretty soft. Let me try to slice one of these in half so I can show you what it looks like. So here's a muffin. It's still very soft, very warm. I'm going to slice it in half so that you can see the interior. But it has a nice golden bottom, and it's dark here, don't forget. Poor distribution of blueberry. This is a C, this is not an A. These are really too soft to cut. But what you're seeing is a nice bottom. I'm seeing tunneling. This is on the mix. This is my mix, and this is a temperature. So my temperature was too cold. It's important that it's warm, and this is what's happened. But you can still see that there are nice bubbles. It's a nice, soft, tender crumb. I have a nice top with a nice crunch and some golden color. But I would have to make this again. I think if I made it 1 or 2 more times. I hate eating in front of you guys, but it's so good. They're really soft and sweet. Let me cut one more. And the blueberries are really good. So when I graded people, the distribution of blueberries was important, and this is terrible, but let me take it out. I'm not being a hard critic or anything like that, and I don't sell my stuff, but I'm telling you, if you sell something, you got to dial it in. If you're doing it for friends, it doesn't matter. So I have some tunneling. That's because when I was making the mix, it didn't emulsify as great as I wanted, and so you get an uneven emulsification, and then it goes in the oven. I think I could have had the oven hotter. I told you, the recipe says 400. I put it 375. It was probably a little bit too cool. But it tastes good. Totally edible. It's a really good recipe. It's sweet, very light. So if you want to try it, maybe even cut in half what I did. And that's easy to do in grams. And dial it in, because I do think that if you have family members that like a really delicate, sweet, old-fashioned muffin, and there are a couple variations on that actual recipe. You can do spice muffins, blueberry chocolate chip. They have some alterations. It is good. It is really good. But everything's, it's not sellable. Like, you could not sell it, but you can eat it. I'm okay with that. I'm a hunt and peck. Like, I'll pick out the blueberries. I'm hungry too. These days I'm really busy, so I don't eat as much. I would practice. It's practice. It's 100% practice. It's practice in the scooping and the sprinkling and knowing how much, and it's practice. And like I said, in a bakery, you end up, you could do easily, and in my class, 96 muffins was accomplished during about 3 hours. And those students started out, it looked like this, and within 8 weeks, they could work and have professional muffins. Like, we sold them, and they all looked incredible. Everyone did a great job. Practice makes perfect, and it's true. The thing about baking is, it's not just about the results. The practice of pastry is literally about enjoying the process. It's about repetition. Your body internalizes whatever you do. And if you do it haphazardly and sloppily and anxiously and unfocused, and that is why this format's challenging for me. I've spent my whole career tuning out noise, and I am very good at being focused. I would tell students, I don't care if you're talking, but as soon as you make a mistake, I'm going to say you're not focused, you know? So when you need to be paying attention is when you're building these muscles. And so if you work well, you build good habits, eventually you get to a point where it becomes rote, that your mind can begin to wander, and that's when you get into flow. Flow happens when you've internalized things to the point where your mind can just relax. And it takes time. So I am a person who likes doing the one thing over and over and over and over and over again. So having to do all these new things is very stimulating, but it's hard. It's actually made me very tired because my brain is working so hard. Well, I am going to have a night. Dave and I are. Phew. So I'll see you Wednesday, but I'm going to pick a really good, interesting recipe. And you're welcome. We're going to do a chocolate cake with a really interesting frosting. It'll be great. I'm always looking at them like, how can we talk about techniques and ingredients and kind of expand what we're connecting? You can start to make connections and understand how ingredients function and just learn. I don't know. It's all about connections. I will put the recipe on the link tree, and I will be doing supplemental notes and things that will go on Substack. And I do stories. I try to keep them a minute or less. I allow you to register for the lives and also be aware of when they're coming. I've started doing little videos that tell you what I'm doing and where to get stuff. So I'll be back on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a chocolate cake and a frosting to go with it. And the recipe will be on the link tree, and you will be able to watch this on YouTube, and there will be notes on Substack. And I teach, lecture, and demo the same way on TikTok Live as I would in person. And while it's lacking in some ways, I think that we're really building a community because a lot of you know each other. And so many of you are beginning to understand that through the community, you can make friends where you can have these conversations about baking that your friends and family maybe are tired of hearing you go on and on about, because we bakers like to talk about baking. Oh, yep. We always are doing the same recipe. Everybody have a wonderful night. Happy baking. Have a great weekend. And I will see you all here next Wednesday. And I appreciate all of you. You are my people. You are the POPers. And that's a really fun thing to be. All right. Good night.